Our next speaker is ID Rusen from IUA TLD.
So I feel especially short after Charles. So I do feel like an outlier. It's one of those kids' exercises where you have to circle which one doesn't fit in with the rest of the people on the list. But I'm still glad to be here, and if you feel I'm too much of an outlier, you can put it on your evaluation forms and they'll revoke my invitation for next year. I think I'd like to obviously update you on the STREAM trials. I'd like to give a little bit of background to why the union's doing this trial and why I'm here, and then obviously link up to our stage 2 trial, and you'll see the tie to a specific compound, whereas for the union it's about the regimens and the most effective and feasible regimens. So just by way of disclosure, the union receives financial support for the STREAM trial from various sources, and I've just listed the sources by the 2 stages of the trial. So for us, this all really stems from the pilot study in Bangladesh. I know many people know this well, but if we go back 10 years for the union, when the results first started to come forward, we were obviously very keen, and we pushed for a review of that pilot project very early on to see what the future held for the regimen. And the results of that assessment that was conducted by the WHO and the then Green Light Committee was that it was too early to recommend this regimen, and that further evaluation was needed, both in terms of different populations outside Bangladesh, and it was too early to recommend at a wider scale. And so the union at that time, as others did, thought there was a parallel approach to evaluating this regimen, both in terms of additional cohort studies, which have been underway over the last few years, and results are increasingly coming out from those cohort studies, some of which are led by the union. And at the same time, to conduct a randomized trial of the shortened regimen. And in 2008, USAID put out a call for proposals for a research cooperative agreement that included the opportunity to evaluate shortened treatment regimens in a clinical trial. The union was successful in obtaining that agreement and initiated the STREAM trial. So stage 1 of the STREAM trial is essentially comparing in a non-inferiority design the modified Bangladesh regimen to the locally used WHO recommended regimen in participating countries. And just to remind people that the only difference between the Bangladesh regimen and the STREAM regimen is that moxifloxacin was substituted for gadafloxacin. Again, the principle was to try to replicate the regimen as was used without any changes, but it could not be obtained easily, so that was the only change that was made. The trial is being conducted currently in 4 countries, Ethiopia, South Africa, Vietnam, and Mongolia. And just by way of just without going into all the exclusion-inclusion criteria, just to highlight the target population, a number of late-phase trials that are now underway or starting that have different populations. The main point is that in STREAM stage 1 and stage 2, patients with resistance to fluoroquinolones and to second-line injectables are excluded. So it's essentially a so-called simple MDR-TB treatment. Enrollment to STREAM began in Durban in 2012. And there were a total of seven sites, and 424 patients were recruited into the trial above the initial target of 400, and intake was closed last June. I'm pleased the retention rates are high. One of the challenges, obviously, with a endpoint of 30 months and many patients completing treatment at 9 months is following patients for 21 months after they're done treatment. But to date, retention rates are very high. The last patient visit is due at the end of 2017, and results expected in Q1, Q2 2018 for STREAM stage 1. Just a reminder of the partners involved. The union is the sponsor, working primarily with the Medical Research Council in the UK, Institute of Tropical Medicine for laboratory work, and with the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine. And the sites, a little hard to read, but are listed there. In 2013, so shortly after we began enrollment to STREAM stage 1, following the conditional approval of bedaquiline, the union was asked by our donor whether it would be possible to include additional regimens into the STREAM trial, and if so, what would they be? So We conducted a number of discussions with our current sites as well as other stakeholders and determined that the primary interest was a fully oral regimen, as well as to continue to shorten and simplify the Bangladesh regimen. So stream stage 2 has 4 regimens. Regimen A and B are the same that are in the current stage 1, so the locally used WHO regimen, the modified Bangladesh regimen, and it now has 2 additional regimens, regimen C and D, a fully oral 9-month regimen, and a 6-month regimen, and C and D both include bedaquiline throughout. Visually, just obviously A and B are the same. Just to say, regimen C, bedaquiline has been added, kanamycin has been dropped, and moxifloxacin has been replaced by levofloxacin because of the contraindications of using the 2 drugs together. And just to note, bedaquiline is used for the full 40 weeks in that regimen. And then regimen D, again, bedaquiline has been added, moxifloxacin replaced by levofloxacin, and to simplify the regimen further, prothionamide and ethambutol have been dropped from the regimen as they were used in Bangladesh, and kanamycin is reduced to 2-month period, and the dose of isoniazid is also increased. So it's just some background on the regimens that are being used. So the objectives of stream stage 2, primary objectives are non-inferiority assessment of whether the all-oral regimen C is as effective as the modified Bangladesh regimen B at the primary endpoint of 76 weeks, and similarly to assess whether the shortened 6-month regimen is as effective as the modified Bangladesh regimen. There's also a parallel regulatory objective to assess whether the proportion of patients with favorable outcomes on regimen C is in fact superior to the modified Bangladesh regimen at the 76-week endpoint. In terms of a timeline, I'm pleased that the first patient in took place last month. If it hadn't, I might not have come to this session, but after many months of preparation, the first patient enrollment has begun. It will be approximately 24 to 30 months to enroll the estimated 1,155 patients that are required in stage 2. And we anticipate that we'll need approximately 10 to 12 countries to reach this sample size. And we also estimate the last patient will be enrolled in approximately Q3 of 2018, which will mean last patient reaches the primary analysis endpoint at Q1 2020 and the long-term follow-up at Q1 2021, with the analysis to follow a few months after those 2 endpoint dates. Finally, just a couple additional points regarding stream stage 2. As in stage 1, there's a comprehensive health economics component, again led by our colleagues at Liverpool. It will take place in at least 3 countries in stage 2. And there's also a strengthened community engagement component, building upon some initial efforts in stage 1, and we're pleased to be working with Ezio Santos and our colleagues at RegTB as a resource to look at some new and innovative opportunities for community engagement in the STREAM trial. So with that, I'd just like to again thank my colleagues in the STREAM trial management group and the site staff and patients for their inputs, and pleased to take any questions you have.
ID, thank you very much.